667 of 2024. These bills were approved by both chambers of the legislature, but have not yet been presented to the governor for her consideration. And we have individuals here today who are here to talk about how they, their friends and family have been affected by those bills not being into law. And we do have a good number of folks who are hoping to testify. So my request to committee members is to please keep, if you're going to ask questions to folks, please try to keep it to one per person. And with that, I believe the first individual that we have is going to be joining via Zoom, and that is Katie Kerstetter. And Katie, I'd ask you to please introduce yourself and welcome to the Senate Committee on Labor.
Hi, thank you. So can I go ahead and speak now?
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. And I know you've
Sorry, my first time doing this. I'm a little nervous. So good afternoon, everyone. As Senator Cherry said, my name is Katie Kerstetter. I am the wife of Michigan State Police Motor Carrier Officer Daniel Kerstetter. I would have loved to have been there in person with you. It's a little difficult via Zoom, but today is my son Daniel's 6th birthday. This will be his first birthday without his father, who was killed while on a traffic stop on I-75 just a few months ago. He was hit by a woman who never should have been driving in the first place, but that is an issue that I will be fighting for another day with you. It was a beautiful Friday morning of the first full week of school, and all 3 of our children, ages 3, 5, and 13, were finally all in school. To parents, you know how life-changing that is. We were finally in our groove. My husband would leave by 7 a.m. so he could be home by 3 to watch the kids while I went to work. And we no longer had to scramble to find babysitters and lose our minds paying for childcare. Life was good. She was going 87 miles per hour when she hit Danny's patrol car at 8:30 in the morning, slamming his Chevy Tahoe into the semi-truck that he had pulled over. Miraculously, he survived that, only to succumb to his brain bleed in front of me at the hospital. But he stayed on life support for 2 days while we found some organ matches. That was his last act, was saving 3 lives. Ironically, and this is the absolute truth, the very last conversation I'd had with my husband the night before his accident was about his job and the work his union was doing. We were new to the whole union thing. He had only been a police officer for a couple of years. He was sitting at the kitchen table that I am actually sitting at right now, and he had this long piece of paper in front of him. And I come down from putting the kids to bed, and I'm like, you know, what's that? And he told me, this is a printout of what I make. This is my paycheck and everything that is taken out of it, from taxes, healthcare, and so forth. And he looked at me and he said, is this job really worth it, what I'm paid for? I risk my life every day. And this was a conversation we had a lot, unfortunately. We really did. He went on to say to me that he needs to take out a life insurance policy because we will have nothing if he dies. And the irony is lost on me that literally this was our last conversation the night before his accident. I had told him, as I had told him before, you know, you need to just stop talking. You got to get involved with your union to fight for yourselves. This is the only thing that you can do because you are just one person. And that is what he had started to do the weeks before he was killed. And that is why I am here today. I am here fighting this fight in honor of my husband and for all of his colleagues, the public safety officers who work tirelessly and sacrifice so much to make our community safer. And isn't it just sad that this is what I have to do, that I am here talking to you? So for all of those who are against these bills, I just want to start by doing some simple math. My husband made around $45,000 a year as a police officer. You take out health insurance, and that one is a doozy. We paid $1,000 a month for our 2 little boys and him and myself. I was kicked off his insurance just weeks after he was killed. And then they put me on what would have been his retirement insurance, So for myself and my boys, I pay a staggering $1,300 a month. And that $1,300 would actually be probably what Danny would be paying now after the first of the year, because the healthcare costs just kept going up and up. So that leaves you with $32,000 pre-tax. Then he would take out a minimal amount for the 401k program. But that was minimal, because how could you take out more to save for retirement and be able to support your family? You just can't. One of Danny's colleagues works the 4 to midnight shift just so he can stay at home to watch his 2 young children. Actually, one is now in school. He does that while his wife goes to work. So then when she comes home, he goes to work. And this is done because they can't afford childcare. So a Michigan State police officer can't afford basic childcare. And if they can't afford that, how can you expect them to save so much money to last them through retirement and to pay for these staggering healthcare benefits? With what? And I think, and rather than I know, I'm sorry, that people have this misconception that our state police officers and public servants, that they receive such insane benefits and it's just so great, and that makes up for the inadequate pay. But they don't, and it's shocking. Now, I don't know about you, but I have always supported our police and public safety officers. After all, I am a Republican. Yes, I am a Republican, as was my husband. And isn't that what we do? We support and we fund our police. But this also has to do with unions and pensions, right? And those are dirty little words to Republicans. I know, I am one. And I'm here to tell you that there are good pension systems and there's bad ones. There's good unions and there's bad ones, like yours. How are the retirement benefits for our Michigan senators and our representatives? You have them. All of you make almost double what some of these officers make, and yet you only have to work a few years and you receive retirement and health benefits for the rest of your life. I think that's great. But what do the people who protect you get? And the sad thing is, you wouldn't need a union, you wouldn't need pensions, you wouldn't need any of these kind of benefits if people were actually paid what they should be paid. If they were paid enough to save for their own retirement, they can make their own investments. They can do what they want to do with their money. But that's obviously not going to happen. And that's why these bills are so important. They are life-changing. And to be honest with you, it is just smart policy. You want to recruit the best, don't you? You want to retain the best. And our Michigan State Police are the best. I don't know why this is so hard for my fellow citizens to understand. I just don't understand it. I don't understand why there could be a single vote against this. And I am disappointed by the fact that the new speaker is holding this up and not putting it before our governor to sign when both chambers passed this in December. These men and women don't deserve this. They risk their lives. They sacrifice so much for you. And some pay the ultimate price, like my husband did. And he didn't deserve this ending. He was a good man. He was a great police officer who went into this profession not for the money. My God, who would do that? He did it to make a difference because he was a patriot, a good American, a good citizen of this state. And this is not hard. And so I say to the speaker, if he ends up listening to this, I say to all of you that are there in this committee to take the win and set politics aside. Some things are just not about politics. They are about right and they are wrong. And so I leave you with this, and I ask you to please take care of the people who take care of you and just to do what's right. It's very simple. And thank you for having me today and allowing me to speak and to tell our story.
Thank you, Ms. Gerstetter, for your testimony, and I'm very sorry for what's happened to your family and what you and your son are going to have to deal with. And I think it underlines the importance of this legislation. We want survivors of folks who have fallen to be able to have some level of stability. And I also thank you to your husband for his decision to donate his organs to so other folks could live. We appreciate your testimony, and members, do you have questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you so much for your testimony and sharing the sacrifice that your husband made to keep our community safe. That's very truly appreciated. There is something that needs to be clarified, though, from the testimony. No one in the legislature, no elected official has a pension. Those have been closed for almost 30 years. So
I'm sorry, is it called a trust fund?
no, we have
Is there a
a
trust fund?
defined contribution 401k, just like state employees do.
Okay, you do not receive any retirement
No,
benefits. You don't receive any health benefits or subsidized. You receive nothing
not through defined benefit plan, no.
through anything.
Correct. We have a defined contribution plan. Yes, ma'am. So I just
Okay.
wanted to make that clear. If I may, Mr. Chair, just two other points. I think this is the first time I've ever heard of, and maybe in Michigan history, where we've had first hearings on bills after they've already passed both legislative chambers. So that's, I guess I just want to make a comment on that. It's highly unusual. And I guess the second question I have is, are we going to have the former speaker come and testify why the bills weren't transmitted?
Senator Albert, we are not having bills before the committee. We're having testimony on people who are impacted by a situation within our state. And if the speaker wishes to come, we'd be happy to have him or the current speaker come before us. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like Chris Genuine, Shelby Township firefighter, who is also providing testimony via Zoom.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and the members of the committee for allowing me to speak on this today. My name is Chris Genuine. I am the union president for the Shelby Township Firefighters, Local 1338. I'm speaking on behalf of the Michigan Professional Firefighters Union and the almost 5,000 career firefighters that protect and serve almost 80% of this great state's residents. Today, I'm going to speak just a little bit on how the Public Act 152 impacted my members as well as other members in our union across the state. In the aftermath of the 2008 recession, our locals across the state stepped up. We worked collaboratively with our municipalities at the bargaining table to address the financial challenges caused by the economic downturn. Healthcare was one of the several areas where those concessions were made. My local was no exception to that. During negotiations, we agreed to adopt what most of us have now as a high deductible plan, and that reduced the healthcare costs for our township significantly, and it provided them with a lot of much needed fiscal relief during that time. In the wake of our healthcare concessions and our contract was settled, Public Act 152 was passed, and shortly thereafter, my township board opted for the 80-20 provision, forcing my members to pay for 20% of the cost of that lesser healthcare plan that we had just agreed to help them. This decision was made without our input, and it placed an additional financial burden on my members, costing them upwards of $4,000 annually on top of the new high deductible they had to pay. That 20% equated to about a 7% pay reduction. Again, this was after all the other concessions they had just made. And after talking to some of my members, we realized it took over 10 years for them to regain the same net pay that they had in 2010. The legislation that was passed represents a step in the right direction to address the flawed calculation of the hard cap and to begin addressing the challenges of the 80-20 as well. This legislation marks the start of returning healthcare decisions to the local bargaining table where they rightfully belong. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Genuine. Members, Senator Camilleri.
Thank you, and thank you for the testimony. You know, one of the things that I think a lot about is that during the Great Recession, we lost a lot of local property tax revenue from the local communities based on the value of homes. And so I know everybody shared in that sacrifice during that time, including our public servants on the ground. And I know that you all were part of those discussions. Some of them were not things that you wanted or agreed to, but they were forced upon you during that time. We're now in a different era of financing at the local government level, right? Where we're seeing those revenues come back up to where they were either at least previously to when the Great Recession began, or they've exceeded those numbers. What would this do for you if you had an ability to go back to the bargaining table with your local government? And how would you be able to, you know, advocate for pay raises or advocate for additional healthcare coverage if you had that chance to go back to the table?
Well, I know for a lot of my members, especially the fact that during those times and those tough times, we were a place that eliminated the pension and went to a 401 plan similar to what you all have now. And just being able for our members to even contribute more to that. It's been very difficult for us to hire people. I know that coming in the door and us telling some of these newer people who are, you know, starting off at the starting pay that, hey, you know, 10, 15% of your pay alone has to go strictly to healthcare to pay for your family's healthcare through the year. And they start looking at other places who may have different healthcare options which we've done research to find out that a lot of the places around us have opted out of even done the third option in Public Act 152 to opt out because it doesn't work for them so that they can try to help hire people. I think it would help with what I consider to be a hiring crisis right now across the state amongst firefighters, paramedics, police officers. Financially for my firefighters who have a 401 plan, they can start investing more money into their retirement accounts for those that, you know, are able to save there. This is probably one of the number one issues for my members that I hear from them that, you know, was something that we couldn't even negotiate, something that was forced upon us after we had just taken a ton of concessions in the last contract. It was shameful.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite up to the microphone Carrie Johnson, a correctional officer from the Cotton Correctional Facility in Jackson, and Ray Schultz. Yeah. So, at the base of the microphone, there's a little button.
Not for us, those at home watch it.
Like you said, I'm a corrections officer. I work at a level, multi-level.
You're good, you're good. No. One more time. They turned it on for you, and then you turned it. There you go. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm a corrections officer. I work at a men's multi-level facility in Jackson. I call it JCF is the acronym for the facility I work. I'm considered a long-term officer, and I've seen a lot in my time working for the Michigan Department of Corrections. I have seen the days when we were fully staffed and officers were able to go home to their families and have a good work-life balance. They were able to table the dangers of a correctional facility and put into areas some of the frightening things that they see with the things that happen behind the walls of the prison. Those days are long and gone. For the last 7 years with the staffing crisis, prisons are now both dangerous and exhausting. JCF, the prison that I work at, has bounced around from around a 30% to a 40% vacancy rate and has been in the top 5 of the prisons in the state of Michigan as far as the vacancy rate. I looked, just for you today, I looked at the hiring practices of my facility alone because I think it's a good example for you to wrap your heads around. Since 2018, JCF has hired 137 new officers. And out of those 137, only 46 remain today. That's not including the probationary employees. But I say that because if you don't care about officer or prisoner safety, you should at least care about wasted money. That's 91 officers that were trained and departed before they could make a difference in the staffing crisis. We are stuck in this cycle of losing more officers than we gain, and the departures are far outpacing the hires. When I looked through the list I have of the departures and the officers that I helped train who are no longer with us, some working in a prison just wasn't for them, but majority of them took their 401ks and went on to greener pastures. Some with legacy benefits like the federal prisons or the small county jails. Others went to better pay without the constant danger and excessive mandates. Many for their own physical and mental health. I look through the list and I'm reminded of those who quit. One of them, he quit and very shortly thereafter took his own life. These bills and the legislation would stop all of that. I look through the names and 5 of them have new babies. One will have 3 years in May and is on leave because she was sexually assaulted a couple months ago. One of them sent a letter, and I feel compelled to read a small portion of it. He says, I have worked 280 working days. I spent 150 of them mandated or volunteering to be avoided being mandated. He says, this job has left me with severe mental health trauma that will live in my head until the day I die. In my short time with the MDOC, I've seen people die, get stabbed, get assaulted. I have been assaulted with a bodily fluid. I've seen drug epidemics, COVID, scabies outbreaks, and many more traumatic experiences that have left me feeling less than I once was. For my wife and for my children, I must start looking elsewhere so I can be who I really am. I saw a statistic somewhere that most of the new applicants are single women, and some are mothers. Grandmothers and daycares are raising these kids because the most mandated officer at my facility alone is a single mother. I look through this list and I see guys that I know that wives have given them ultimatums that say it's either your work or me. It's either your work or our family. A couple of men have told me that they're getting divorced. When I ask why, they say she needed attention and I wasn't home to give her any. We are really drowning in this staffing crisis. And personally, I'm fortunate. My son is 15. I was with him back when we had staff, when he was young. And now my husband is, he's solid and he steps up. But I was mandated Monday. I worked 16 and a half hours. Tuesday, I had East Lansing basketball. And today I'm here with you. So I'm fortunate that I'm able to manage through this. A pension, a legacy benefit for officers would let them see a light at the end of the tunnel. It would allow some of the aging officers, the prison populations are getting younger, the officer population is getting older, because the younger officers just don't stay because they can't. I mean, I have guys that are like, how am I ever gonna find a girlfriend if I'm here all the time, And it's really been crazy to see people that you train and you spend a lot of time getting them to understand how prison works, and then they leave. And so the cycle makes it so that the type of officers make, when they're coming and going quickly, they're not invested in the work. And to make a prison safe, you have to have long-term veteran officers that know how to do that. A light at the end of the tunnel is what they need, and it would help us stop the drain. So I would love questions. I'm hopeful to it. Okay, yeah, go.
I just want to touch on behalf of all the corrections officers in the state. Society thinks a prison is a dark place where you lock people up and you forget about them. It's just the way it is. And when you work in there for 16 hours plus every day, you feel forgotten about too. This legislation is the first piece of legislation over 50 years that corrections officer said, somebody gives a shit about me. It has not happened before. And these exhausted, miserable folks over the last year sent 65,000 email communications from the governor on down to each one. Y'all seen them. Thousands of phone calls, 50+ in-district visits. This is the moment. You know, we watch the legislation go through both chambers, bipartisan, because legislators take care of their constituents. This isn't a partisan issue whatsoever. And all I have to finish with say, it'd be a damn shame if this doesn't go to the governor's desk. Now you can give Carrie questions.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. You know, I believe everybody should be able to have a job, a profession in which they're able to raise and support a family, offer opportunity to their kids. And it's doubly true when you're working for the state. We should be making sure that the employment situations are such that you can actually spend some time with your kids and be able to raise them. I'm sorry for all the difficulty that yourself and your colleagues have been going through for years at this point. And I'll just mention Senator Schink asked to join us today as your senator to be able to be here for that testimony. Members, we have questions. Senator Albert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's more of a comment, but I just wanted to thank you for your testimony today. I've been in the legislature for just over 8 years now. I used to have in my old district 4 prisons at the time in my House district. When I was subcommittee chair of corrections and appropriations, I toured every prison in the Lower Peninsula. I never made it to the Upper Peninsula ones. I still want to do that. But I don't think anything has frustrated me more than seeing the lack of progress on improving vacancies. You guys have great points and true problems that really need to be addressed. I don't think they are being addressed. And I appreciate what you're trying to put forward a solution to a real problem. And I cannot thank you enough for doing that. I disagree on the solution. I don't think a pension is going to fix all of the problems. One of the problems is people aren't saving enough money for retirement. I completely agree with that. That's a valid point. I think we need to increase wages. If we increased wages by 10%, that would be like $50 million. Now, we as a legislature cannot dictate wages that gets negotiated with the executive, but we can put money aside specifically for a purpose, and if they don't use it, well, I guess that's their problem, but we can do our part and put it there. Another thing we can do is increase the defined contribution plans, and last term I put forward a proposal that would do that. Over time, in order to retain people, they would graduate up to a 10% match. And that would cost, just to get them up to a 10% match in year one would cost $30 million. So for $80 million out of a $2 billion plus budget, there's things we can do to solve the real problems that you're putting forward. I guess I just want to let you know, from my perspective, I see your problem. I'm frustrated that it's not being fixed, and it's not being fixed in a timely manner, but 8 years now, and I don't think we've gotten any better. And we have to change something, and I agree with you. So thank you so much for your testimony.
Can I just respond real quick to your comment? Because I like that it seems like you've put a real thought into an alternative. I just want to say that the long-term officers that we've seen and that stay mostly are waiting for some sort of long-term benefit to pay out, like a pension or a 80-20 healthcare. And I think it's just kind of like, I heard a officer describe it as my pension's almost a ball and chain because I can't leave until I get to this end. And I don't want officers to feel like that in their job, but I do understand it because it does keep someone in the job that, it keeps them long-term. So it gives them, so I like the idea that you talked about.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just a very quick point to that.
Very quick.
The plan does have a guaranteed annuity option that a member would be able to buy into. So if they wanted a defined benefit plan through an annuity, through a private annuity that's in a much healthier shape than the pensions that we have, it would be offered and available for them to do. So it's kind of achieving the same end through a different means.
Senator Keeler.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. I think one of the things that I think a lot about with our public employees is that we didn't have these staffing issues for police, for fire, for teachers prior to taking away the pension system. And you all never had this in the first place. And so staffing issues were never a problem when pensions were the gold standard of a benefit that public employees could look forward to. Yes, they may have given up a super high paying salary, but they knew that at the end of that 30 years of work, they were getting something for the long term for financial security. I think that for us as a legislature, we don't have direct control over your salary. We can continue to invest more money in local budgets to help support the bargaining process. But what we can do, and what we did do, is open up the pension system for our corrections officers. So I have less of a question, more of just a overall statement that I think echoes a lot of the things that you're bringing up, because we did do something about it. And it is currently sitting over in the House waiting for the governor to put her signature on it. And I hope that it will fix these problems if and hopefully when she gets a chance to sign it. Because I've talked to corrections officers in my district, and one of the first things that I remember this conversation so distinctly, it was in Van Buren Township when I was knocking on doors. This is the first thing that she brought up to me, was fixing this problem, and how she works 16-hour shifts, and she has mandatory overtime, and she doesn't have time with her family. But if she knew that at the end of her career, she could have some financial stability, she said it would all be worth it.
Thank you.
Senator Schenk?
Thank you for coming today. So I think from what you're talking about, we've heard, and I've got a chart that shows that staffing levels are dangerously low in most of our correctional facilities. And in some facilities, the vacancy rate is over 30%. So I think where you're talking about, JCF, the vacancy rate is almost 35%, which means 84 out of 245 positions remain unfilled. At the Cooper Street Correctional Facility, it's a vacancy rate of 33.6%. That means 51 staff out of 153 positions remain empty. At Women's Huron Valley, 109 staff out of 344 positions were empty as of last fall. This means officers have to work long hours. As we heard, they're unable to care for their families because they're forced to work overtime without notice, and they're suffering mental and physical health consequences due to overwork. And I've heard quite a few officers' stories to that effect. And that means also that officers are left with large groups of prisoners without the backup that they need and deserve. Officers and prisoners are less protected against violence, from what I understand. And my understanding is also that in spite of recruitment efforts, the levels of staffing remain low due to corrections officers leaving MDOC employment for other opportunities. Many corrections officers have told me that these bills with the hybrid pension that they offer will keep more officers in the prisons. Given the low staffing levels and what seems like an uptick in violence against officers, I'm concerned about the potential for increased violence in our correctional facilities. Can you talk about concerns you might have or other correctional officers might have about violence, potentially riots with such low staffing levels, and how these bills could help with that situation?
I think I've talked about how I feel like the bills would help with that situation, but I try to make what I'm saying personal. I'm a not very old lady, and I work in a men's housing unit with 96 men in my unit. And a couple weeks ago, my partner at 6:30 a.m. left for a transportation run. I worked from 6:30 a.m. until 10 p.m. by myself in that housing unit. I did not have an opportunity to go up front. I had a yard officer bring me a beverage, soda, and one of the times that I was alone, I had two gang members decided to stab each other in a shower. In that case, the officer had to respond from the adjacent unit. So picture it, me in a bathroom, a men's bathroom, responding to two prisoners, and once they're stabbing each other, that means I have to intervene because we're talking about lives. And the help that came from the adjacent unit, who he was also by himself that day. His partner was monitoring chow hall, which is a brief thing. So when he arrived, they halted movement in another area, and then yard staff were able to get there too. But things went good that day with low staffing. I stayed safe, he stayed safe, and nobody was injured. But I'm sure I could explain all of the different scenarios that could happen where that may not have gone as well as it should. But, you know, I like to think that I'm tough, but I don't know that I am, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Senator Kavanaugh.
Thank you. I think it's real tough to work that long and come here and still continue to fight for what you're doing. So I appreciate your testimony and still being here. I also believe in solutions. So I am getting a little sick and tired of talking about the past and who we can bring into committee and who we can talk to. I think we're at this point right now that we've never seen in legislative history. What is the solution? And so from what I'm hearing from my residents as well as across Michigan, these bills are and were the solution and passed both chambers and were representative of the state of Michigan. And so I am also like a legislator like my colleagues, and instead of hearing a problem and telling you how to fix it, I'm gonna hear from the people that are doing the boots on the ground. And myself, I prefer to be a legislator that listens. And what I'm hearing is these issues have been a very long time coming. And these people that are working see these bills as a possible solution. And so my one question, knowing your experience, your knowledge, your dedication, do you believe that these bills are a solution that can help combat some of the issues that you addressed today and that you're seeing in the state of Michigan?
Like I said earlier, the recruitment department is doing what they can, right? 137 officers would have made a difference. But 46 doesn't keep up with the amount of people leaving that are past the 2018 that I mentioned. We just need them to stay. And when prisons are not fun places, they're a necessary branch of state government, they're a necessary hidden branch of law enforcement. And the only way, and if you can tell me I'm wrong, I would love to hear it, but the only way to retain people is money and benefits. And as some of the earlier testimony said, was that a lot of people sacrifice pay amount for long-term benefits because they know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. This job is grueling. You're on hard pavement, you're responding to fights physically, and injuries happen, and knowing that it'll all be worth something one day is what keeps people employed at that place. It's why I've stayed as long as I have, because I know that I've had good medical benefits, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and that's what people need to stay.
Yeah, real solutions right now. I appreciate your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much for coming today to share your story. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite up Jennifer Weirick, bus driver from Saginaw Transit. Welcome to the Senate Labor Committee, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Senate Chair, for allowing me to speak today. Again, my name is Jennifer Weirick. I apologize up front. I have a migraine headache, so these lights is just really like killing me. So I apologize if I sound a little slurred. Again, my name is Jennifer Weirick. I am from the public sector. I am from Saginaw. I work for Saginaw Transit. We go by STARS. I've been in the public sector at STARS for 30 years. 30 years, I started at, not as a bus driver, but I ventured over to a bus driver. And I provide a service at our company that helps people have mobility through the community. And when I say mobility, I'm talking about the special services that we provide for people that's wheelchair restricted, ADA passengers, people that's on dialysis. That's the service that I provide at the company. And it's a great service that we provide. It's beneficial for our community. It helps us give something to the community that they wouldn't have if we wasn't there. And so we feel good to do that job. So when I do new member orientation, because I am the local union president as well, when I do new member orientation, I always talk about the service that we provide. Why is it a good service? Why we do it? How we do it? And then the benefits of it too. So when I tell them, you know, I know the wages are low because public sector does not make a lot of money. We have new hires that come in at $15 an hour. And then I tell them about the benefits. I tell them about the health care. When I tell them about the health care and I tell them, okay, if you have a family, you make $15 an hour, that's about $30,000 a year. But your health care is gonna cost you for your premiums about $400 a month. And you say, oh, well, that's not a lot of money. Well, when you only make $30,000 and you have a family, it is a lot of money because that's just your premiums. That's not including everything else that goes along with health care. You have your co-pays, you have your high deductibles, and then you have your maximum out-of-pocket expenses, which becomes very costly. And so over the years, since Public Act 152 went in effect, because we went from zero healthcare costs to the 20/80 split, when we went to that, we have lost benefit levels at a high rate, trying to keep the rates low enough for the members can afford to pay it. Because like I said, if you're making $15 an hour, it becomes extremely costly for someone to pay for coverage that's extremely high. So we have lost healthcare coverage. We have lost benefits out of that. We have went to extremely high deductibles, extremely high copays, extremely high prescription costs to try to keep the costs down. But then on top of that, we have put our members in a situation that they bear the burden of anything that might happen in their life when it comes to health care. If they have to incur a hospital bill or anything else, that exposure is back onto the employees. That is detrimental to our workforce. That hinders the work that we provide for the community. Our community is not that large. We don't have a lot of jobs that pay extremely high, okay? So it was always a good job to have if you came to work at Stars. It was always a good job for longevity, job retention. Right now, we're not having we don't have job retention now because we have a lot of private sector out there that's doing the same work that we do. They pay more, which we can't do anything about that, but the benefit levels are different. The cost of the insurance is less. And so we train people to actually do the job, become CDL drivers. And as soon as the opening comes, we have to look forward to someone is leaving to go to that opening for that other job. So we constantly have a revolving door. The cost of the health care is crucial to our members. It's devastating to actually come to work every day and then realize that a big chunk of your check is going towards your health care costs. Even though we love the work that we do, it's hard to do the work and provide for your family. And we should expect more from our state. We should expect more from our representatives that we elect to say, okay, public sector workers, we respect you, we give you dignity, and we want you to have what you need to survive and take care of your family. I find it appalling that people don't think that way. And my members do too. Because at the end of the day, we provide a service to the community. It's a service that the community needs, but we can't get the things that we need. We can't afford the things that we need. And if we can't afford the things that we need, it's hard to provide that service. And I thank you for letting me speak today.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and we appreciate it. Public service is a noble profession, and we should provide respect and dignity to those who choose to engage in public service. Members, we have questions. Senator Camilleri?
Thank you so much for your testimony. I really appreciate it. What would you do with that extra $400 a month? What would your members do with that extra $400 a month?
Childcare. We have a problem with, we're trying to hire a diverse group of people. They're appealing to younger people, but younger people have young kids. And so childcare is a big issue. And it hardens my heart to send them to agencies to get assistance that we can't, because they can't afford to pay for those things like childcare. Access to a vehicle to get to work. That $400 can give them access to a vehicle. We have employees that catch the bus to work. And if they need to be there before the buses actually run, there's a problem. And so now we have a scheduling problem because they can't get to work that hour before they have to be scheduled to work. So $400, that's just a small part of the healthcare, will help a lot of people at my job for a lot of different reasons.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite up Claude Gentry, a MSP motor carrier officer. Welcome to the Senate Committee on Labor.
Thank you. All right, there we go. Well, thank you for having me here today. My name is Clyde Gentry. I'm a Michigan State Police motor carrier officer with the Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Division. I served the state of Michigan for 9 years enforcing law as it pertains to commercial motor vehicles. I've worked out of the Monroe, Brighton, and I currently now work out of the Mount Pleasant post. If you're unaware, a state police motor carrier officer is an armed enforcement member that's primary function is to protect the citizens and infrastructure of our state through strict size, weight, and load enforcement and maintaining highway safety through traffic enforcement on commercial vehicles. Though traffic safety is our primary function, other duties include enforcing criminal law, being a first responder to critical incidents, and assisting other law enforcement agencies. Chances are you've probably encountered a motor carrier officer without even realizing it, as there's a lot of similarities between myself and troopers with the exception of pay and benefits. Every day, my fellow officers and I respond to life-saving law enforcement calls in every corner of the state. We are trusted members of the communities that we serve, and keeping Michigan State Police motor carrier officers on the roadway and in the field is essential to our great state. I'm here today to advocate on behalf of my fellow officers regarding the pension bills that have been passed by both the House and the Senate and are currently awaiting Governor Whitmer's signature. As you know, law enforcement is facing a challenge with recruiting and retention, and the Michigan State Police is no exception. We are facing challenges with losing officers to jobs that offer better pay and better retirement benefits. If you're unaware, it costs the Michigan taxpayers roughly $150,000 to train a single motor carrier officer and place them on road patrol. We lose a large portion of our officers, not from retirement, but from seeking better opportunities, usually within the first 5 years after they've worked the road and have seen firsthand the pay and benefit disparities between MCOs and our counterparts, state troopers. At this time, myself and the majority of officers have a 401k retirement. And as of today, the passing of the bills in both the House and the Senate have changed the minds of 2 officers within my classification from turning down conditional offers of employment for the trooper position, and a handful of others who are actively seeking employment elsewhere, holding off only because of the pension bills. There is no better example of how these benefits can help retain officers. Over the course of my career, I've dealt with countless life-altering situations, everything from saving lives of young children to physical altercations with suspects who say they have nothing else to lose. I've been in vehicle pursuits, foot pursuits, arrested felons, taken countless illegal firearm and narcotics off of our roads. I've taken countless unsafe vehicles and drunk drivers off of our roadways through traffic enforcement. I've rendered aid to dying individuals as their families watch and have had violent criminals threaten the livelihood of my family. In the last year, I can recall 3 officers that have been struck while conducting traffic stops or policing crash scenes on our roadways. And with that being said, I'd like to take a moment to recognize Motor Carrier Officer Daniel Kurtstetter, who you guys have heard from his wife, Katie, this morning. I want to recognize his service and sacrifice to the citizens of the state of Michigan. As you know, Officer Kurtstetter was killed in the line of duty on September 15th in 2024 while conducting a traffic stop on I-75 in Metro Detroit. Officer Kurtstetter's death is a grave reminder of the inherent dangers that we face every day. With the pension, officers and their loved ones will have better financial security and a common goal to work towards. One of the other individuals that spoke earlier called it light at the end of the tunnel. The families of officers who have permanently been disabled and or have paid the ultimate sacrifice will have one less burden to carry. Offering a pension is a standard practice for law enforcement. Ultimately, a pension will assist in recruiting and retention by showing value in those who have served. It will give us the financial security we need after working a dangerous career, a career that can break us down both physically and mentally. Law enforcement is truly a work of the heart, but as we all know, being able to provide for our family is also a factor when selecting a career. Please take into consideration the dangers my fellow officers and I deal with daily without hesitation. We willfully deal with these dangers because we have a calling to protect the citizens of our communities in a great state. I ask you all today to fulfill the duties and assist with progressing these bills to the final step of the legal process. I ask you to continue to support Michigan State Police motor carrier officers, state property security officers, DNR conservation officers, and Michigan corrections officers. Expanding this pension program is what the people of the state need and what public safety officers deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and thank you for your service to the people of the state of Michigan. It's clear to me that the people covered by these bills very much deserve and need the benefits that would be provided if they're signed into law, and I sincerely hope that they're presented to the governor for her signature. Members, questions? Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite up Todd Simon, Karen Leonard, and Kim Sandifer, who are teachers with the Waverly Education Association, the Troy School District, and the Comstock School District. You can just pull up an extra chair if you'd like. Yeah. Thank you for joining us today.
All right. Hi, my name is Todd Simon. I'm a 25-year veteran teacher, having taught in both private and public schools. First 5 years of my career was in private schools. Last 20 years has been in public schools. I'm here to speak about the importance of sending House Bill 6058 to the governor. Legislation has passed both chambers in December and is now being held up by the House Speaker in violation of the Michigan Constitution. Before I speak on the merits of House Bill 6058, I think some context is important. I'm a history teacher, so context is really important to me. So many public servants like myself went into teaching or other forms of public service, serving the people of Michigan, knowing that we would never be wealthy being a public servant. We had other options. I considered other things, going into law, engineering, medical field. But we chose this field to make a difference. We knew it wasn't going to be financially lucrative, but we wanted to make that difference for our students and the people of Michigan. Knowing that we would never get rich in these professions, we at least knew that the subpar wages, we had good benefits, at least when I went into it. We had good health insurance, and the pension's okay. For example, anyone on my generation in the program, pension program I'm in, after 30 years, when I can retire, if I go with that at 30, I get about 45% of my highest 3 years, consecutive years. It's not a great amount, okay? For many years, when local unions, at least for teachers, were negotiating contracts as healthcare costs rose, we oftentimes chose to take less in raises to our wages to keep the good healthcare. But back in, I think it was 2011, when PA 152 was passed, those benefits were severely reduced. Pension rates were lowered unless we opted to pay more, so I opted to pay more to keep the benefits, meager benefits I had for pension. In addition, we had to pay 3% of our salary towards a retiree health care. And employer health care contributions were capped to an either 80-20 split or the state hard cap. Though the impact of those decisions led to teachers having to pay more out of pocket for benefits than they were promised to us and that what we expected and accepted in return for the lower pay. To me and many others in the legislature, it felt like the legislator did a bait and switch. We went into this profession knowing we'd never get rich, but we'd have good benefits, but now reducing and defunding those benefits has made it less attractive as a profession. As far as my district chose the state hard cap option for the district's health care insurance contribution. The problem with that over the last decade or so is that health insurance costs have risen far above the increases of the state hard cap, which means that teachers are having to pay more out of pocket for their health insurance. And by the way, when I use teachers, I'm talking about everyone in public service and in schools, parapros, lunch service, bus drivers, okay? But I'm a teacher, so I'm mentioning teachers, okay? This additional contribution out of pocket for our health insurance is contributing to a growing disenchantment with being a teacher. Teaching become more and more difficult over time anyways, with more and more put on our plates without any extra time to complete those tasks, and with less and less administrative support in the classroom. The ever-growing increased costs of out-of-the-pocket expense for health insurance, along with the other challenges of teaching in modern times, has led to many teachers questioning remaining in the profession, and they've been leaving in droves. Just in my local high school, I can think of a half a dozen people that have left the profession in the last couple of years or retired earlier than they wanted to, just because they couldn't take it anymore. I was just thinking while others were testifying, in my social studies department, 7 through 12, we have roughly 10 people in the last, I think, 3 or 4 years. We had 2 that left, econ teacher and a financial literacy teacher that left, to just done with the profession, walked away. Another teacher was a social studies teacher, was a 7th grade social studies teacher. She was laid off last year. We had a vacancy, came later in the year. She was offered it back. She said, no, I'm done. So that's just a few of them. My longtime department chair, after 35 years, he wanted to keep teaching, but was done with the BS. So he retired as well when he had more to give. Okay. On top of that, we also have far fewer young people going into the teaching profession because of these type of attacks on the profession that make it much less desirable. Unfortunately, this is impacting the children of our state. The passage of House Bill 6058 would help address one thing that's putting financial strain on educators and contributing to the growing teacher shortage. This has impacted me personally. Like many others in the profession, my wages have stagnated. For example, my wages over the last 10 years have increased 13.5%. If you do the math, that's less than 1.5% per year. Not only does that not cover the average inflation rate, but is far below the rates in which health insurance has increased, causing undue financial burden on me and my family. Health insurance premiums over the last 10 years have increased somewhere between 65 and 75%, depending on what study you look at. Teachers and other public servants have had to absorb most of those increased costs because of the subpar increases in the state hard cap. For me personally, once the state hard cap was implemented, and just speaking of this year and last year, I've had to pay more out of pocket. So health insurance premiums went up 17% for my local bargaining unit this year for our costs. The state hard cap only went up 0.2%. This has led to a much larger out-of-pocket expense. And that's just not this year, that's counting the 10 to 15 years. I've oftentimes had to take a lower cost premium and therefore a reduction in benefits, health insurance benefits, in order to cover the increased costs. A while ago, before all this, I had full family coverage. It covered everything with very minimal cost to me out of pocket. Just this year, from last year to this year, last year my bi-monthly premium for insurance was $154. It jumped this year, January 1st, because of the increase in insurance costs, but the hard cap hardly at all increasing to over $207 a month. That's an additional $1,267 out to pay out of pocket for my premium than I did just last year. That's a 34% increase. How are teachers, supposed to afford this along with stagnant wages? My insurance plan, also because of reduced coverage, to be able to afford the premium, also has a $4,000 deductible. That means my out-of-pocket cost for health insurance this year, with the premium costs and the deductible, will be $8,978 this year. It's well over 10% of my salary. is not sustainable. I'm lucky to have had parental support to help pay for college, have made choices for myself that made it financially bearable for me, bought a smaller house than I could have afforded and paid it off early. I drive cars that are 10 years old. Mine's 15 years old, but my wife's is 10 years old. So I can absorb these additional costs, though I shouldn't have to, but what I really worry about is my younger colleagues. Many of my younger colleagues can't afford the additional healthcare costs. They have financial obligations that I do not have, like student loans, rent or mortgage payments, children to raise. My kids are out of the house now. Maybe single. Many of my younger colleagues are considered leaving the profession because of the rising costs of everything, but especially their health insurance premium costs. I worry about the future of the profession. House Bill 6058, which has already been passed, just needs to be passed on to the governor, would address these concerns by changing the way the state hard cap will be calculated going forward to make it more equitable for your public servants. It would tie the hard cap to a different calculation, connected more towards health rate increases rather than just an overall inflation increase. This would alleviate the insurance costs going up every year that we are facing and driving people out of the profession. Another, and I thought I'd talk about this one specifically because it doesn't necessarily affect everybody else probably that's going to testify about this, is that with the kids out of the house, I'm a two-person household. The way the hard cap is calculated for two-person households, as the state hard cap number is just doubled then for two persons, okay? The problem with that is that the cost of health insurance premiums for two-person households are well more than double what they are for single people. So what that means is that I oftentimes have to pay a greater premium, a larger premium than obviously my single colleagues, but also with full family, which have maybe dozens of kids, It costs more for my premium cost for that. Okay. And that's not really fair. So House Bill 6058 would address that incrementally over the next few years to fix that. House Bill 6058 addresses many of these issues that are creating an undue burden on our public servants, like public school teachers. Teachers are leaving the profession and fewer are going into the profession, which has led to a growing teacher shortage. 6058 would address one of the reasons that is making remaining in teaching or entering the profession less appealing. It would be a step in the right direction to make the profession more appealing. And so I implore the House Speaker to pass on 6058. It was legally passed by the House and the Senate in the previous session, and that the Michigan Constitution requires past legislation to be sent to the governor for her signature or veto. Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Do you have testimony you'd like to provide?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I can start. First of all, I just wanted to say that this has been really eye-opening for me because my world is education and teachers, and I think my eyes have been open to all of the public sector, and it's just shocking to me that we have bills sitting there ready to help the public sector, and they're not happening. So hopefully today's testimonies will address that more thoroughly. So I wanted to say good afternoon. My name is Karen Leonard. I live in Pleasant Ridge, Michigan. This is my 25th year of teaching as a public school teacher. 23 of those years have been spent in Troy, in the Troy School District. And I am here today to reiterate how important House Bill 6058 is to teachers. The current rise in health insurance costs is directly impacting teachers and their ability to stay in the profession or even consider entering the profession. I am in the latter stages of my career in education. I have waited 25 years with a master's plus 30 to not stress about my take-home pay and my benefits. But instead of that happening, I have been directly impacted by this dramatic rise in health costs that have hit most educators in the state. Most hovering around the 10 to 20% mark. Mine was nearly 13% this year, raising my deductible $800, and my monthly premiums have now increased by at least $100 a month. I am a type 1 diabetic. So to clarify, becoming a type 1 diabetic has nothing to do with what you eat or how much you exercise. It can occur at any age, despite people thinking it only starts in childhood. It is a lifelong condition where the pancreas makes little to no insulin, which leads to high blood sugar levels. It is an autoimmune condition, and it is still not clear what causes type 1 diabetes, but most people have some sort of trigger or illness prior to diagnosis. A type 1 diabetic needs to take lab-made insulin for life several times a day. It is an exhausting disease and requires active maintenance to stay healthy. Type 1 diabetes is an expensive condition, a very expensive condition. And because I'm a teacher, I have to bring visuals. So here are things that I need just on a regular basis. This is a sensor. This goes on my arm or on my stomach. This is $300 every 10 days. Testing strips. This is a transmitter, $400. Okay, so everything we use as diabetics is, of course, very expensive. And of course, I take both long-acting insulin and short-acting insulin. And I'm in a better situation because I can actually get my insulin in pens, which many of our other people in the public sector are not even able to get that. So whenever I pick up my first batch of insulin in the new year, the pharmacist at CVS always whispers, "Do you know how much this is going to cost?" Every single time. It is generally $1,900 until I reach the deductible. So when I pick up my insulin, it is $1,900 in that one moment to get my insulin. It doesn't take long to hit the deductible, but that is a lot of money at one time. Because Troy is a bigger district, we were able to have a few different plan offerings. The issue when you have a chronic illness is that you have to take the Ritz-Carlton most expensive plan because you need all your medications and devices covered. So as a family, we are now paying substantially more just so I can get the medication I need to live. I have talked to members with epilepsy and MS who are all dealing with similar scenarios. Another member has a child with a neuromuscular disorder that requires incredibly expensive medication. The bottom line is that we are pricing teachers out of healthcare, especially newer teachers who make around $36,000 to $40,000 a year. Low wages and high healthcare costs do not make for a sustainable career. Instead, teaching is now becoming a job someone might do for 1 to 3 years max and then move on to something when they can have a better salary and or a better benefits package. This directly impacts children in our state because they will not have teachers to teach them. The key to every great society is education, and the key to a great education are great skilled teachers. But each year, fewer and fewer college students are choosing to enter this line of work. 69% of Americans agree that pay and benefits is the biggest barrier to pursuing a career in education. The #1 reason why teachers leave education is compensation on top of the exhausting burnout. Nearly every one of the younger 22 to 32-year-old members in my building are already living paycheck to paycheck without even weighing in increased health insurance. One younger member even stated, "The financial reality is unsustainable, and now new teachers must make a hard choice between their financial stability, their health, or continuing to do what they love, which is teaching." I am here today for those younger teachers. It's also important to note that mental and psychosomatic diseases are more common in teachers than in non-teachers. The demands of the career lead to burnout quicker than most other jobs, according to the National Institute of Health. In every district, we hear the chatter about supporting students' social and emotional well-being and teachers' social and emotional well-being, but the truth of the matter is mental health care costs a lot of money. So teachers are often paying out of pocket for these services or not paying at all because they're choosing not to get the help that they need because the cost is such a deterrence. This is a constant cycle of burnout and stress. So as a teacher like me who has 25 years in the system and has made a career out of public education, but this will not be the norm for teachers moving forward unless something changes. When I started in 1999, the medical benefits educators received made being in the profession much more attractive and somewhat compensated for our lower salaries. Over the years, educators have taken on more financial burdens to keep our health insurance. We work at ground zero when it comes to viral and bacterial illnesses, which often results in more doctor's visits. Many teachers like me have been in the teaching profession for years, relying on having good health insurance to provide for our families. It was the one benefit that our profession relied on. It made up for the abysmal salaries to start. I was thrilled when we settled the contract this year with the district in Troy because I was finally going to get a bit of a bump in pay. But now the small bump I received was quickly eaten up by the increase in my healthcare costs. I cannot afford for these healthcare costs to continue increasing unless there is a dramatic increase in pay. This is not sustainable. My brother, who is 2 years younger than me and also lives in the Metro Detroit area, is also a type 1 diabetic. We are on many of the same medications. While his health insurance may cost more than mine, he makes 2.5 to 3 times my salary in corporate America. Something has to give, or we will continue to have very few people enter this line of work. Our salary already does not match the workload and expectations, and the increase in healthcare cost has only made this worse. The best and brightest educators continue to leave a profession that they love for greener pastures because they have no other choice. Thank you.
Try and get a little closer. Good afternoon. My name is Kim Sandifer. I am a math teacher, so by nature, I'm just as you talked history, I'm going to talk math. You do also all have printed copies, so you can follow along. And I just want to thank you here for having me today to talk about this important issue. I'm a proud public school teacher from Comstock, Michigan. For those of you who are unfamiliar with that small town, it is located in House Speaker Matt Hall's District 42, just down the road from Richland. I've been an elementary educator for 18 years, and I'm a second career teacher. I also have an 8-year-old daughter that attends public school and is in 2nd grade. In my day-to-day teaching, I teach math to 4th and 5th graders, a job I've excelled at in recent years as I've had the opportunity to gain experience and participate in professional development opportunities. In fact, I'm proud to say my students year after year have shown some of the highest growth in both my building and district as measured by the MSTEP and NWA assessments on math. When I started teaching 18 years ago, there was not a teacher shortage. In fact, it was such a competitive market, my only job options were to either move out of state or take a job in a charter school until I could gain enough experience to become employed in a public school. I started out with subpar pay and terrible benefits, changing insurance carriers every single year as my employer sought to keep costs as low as possible, regardless of what it would mean to the quality of coverage. After 6 years, I was finally able to get hired in a public school. While the wages weren't all that much more impressive to start, in fact, it was only about $1,000 more, the security of having quality medical, vision, dental, retirement benefits made the transition from one employer to another worth it. No more having to worry about which insurance company I'd be using come January, no more having to wonder if I have to switch doctors because this new plan no longer participates with that provider, and peace of mind knowing that whatever medical diagnosis may come my way, I would be covered, and more importantly, I wouldn't go bankrupt from medical bills. And then came the effects of PA 152. And over a decade later, here we are today. In the midst of a teacher shortage, stagnant wage increases, skyrocketing healthcare costs, we are here today to continue discussions on the negative impacts this legislation is having on Michigan educators, students, and families. While HB 6058 may not be a perfect fix, it is a step in the right direction. And the legislature agreed, passing the bill in 2024 for Governor Whitmer to take action on, whether signing or vetoing the bill, as is her right per our state constitution. Speaker Matt Hall's inaction to send this and other bills to the governor's desk is inexcusable. Playing party politics with people's health care and income is deplorable. We are struggling to recruit and retain highly qualified teachers as it is. They should not have to choose between healthcare and the job that they so love doing. Nobody's ever gone into education to get rich, but the rewards through student outcomes and decent benefits have always helped to offset the pay. But this year we're seeing unprecedented indirect pay cuts that do not match the cost of living increases and a hard cap increase that can barely be called an increase. There are teachers in my county that are eligible to retire this year, and the rising cost of their health care insurance is factoring heavily into how much longer they will stay in the classroom. A veteran teacher in a neighboring district, also in Speaker Hall's area, was forced to take a second job as an usher this year at an event center just to cover medical costs incurred from this lack of a hard cap increase. So I'm a math teacher. Here's the numbers of my reality. Everything is based on full family figures because that is what I pay out of insurance. And for the sake of time, I'm just going to round numbers. You can see the individual dollars and cents. 3%. This is my annual salary increase from last school year to this year. An annual gross increase of $2,285, or really $88 a paycheck. 17%. This is the rate increase my district saw in annual health insurance premiums this year. 0.2%. This is the current hard cap increase for 2025, an annual increase for a full family of $42.02, or about $1.60 a paycheck. $37,000 and some change is the annual premium that my family would pay if I was on the Ritz-Carlton plan of health insurance that I've been on for over a decade. That included a $2,000 family deductible and pharmaceutical coverage starting on January 1st. After the hard cap, this is $16,000 out of my paycheck for the year, or about $518 a paycheck. $32,800, that is the premium for my new insurance plan I have decided to switch to, which is the high deductible plan you've heard so much about. It has a $4,000 family deductible, is finally eligible for an HSA, and most notably, pharmaceutical coverages do not start until after the deductible is met. After the hard cap, this is $11,800 or $318 a paycheck. $4,500, that was the difference in savings. I had to switch, whether I liked it or not. 0, the amount of money currently in my HSA, because it is January 29th, and you cannot contribute to an HSA until you're on an HSA eligible plan. $1,355.46, that's my net income paycheck as of January 1st this year, after all mandated elective deductions are taken out, and I'm an 18-year teacher, I'm at the top of the pay scale. $397.62 is the amount of lost money I've paid per month going forward. $1,554 was my net income actually as of prior to January. 40 is the age I was diagnosed with a chronic heart condition that would go on to require 4 different life-saving heart medications that I am currently on today. On December 29th of last month, my 8-year-old daughter became ill and developed a high fever. We spent the next few days, as most families do, monitoring the fever at home and treating it with ibuprofen and Tylenol. On January 1st of this year, just 28 days ago, after 4 days of fever, her temperature reached over 105 degrees. It was no longer responding to medication and still climbing. We made the difficult choice to spend our holiday in the ER seeking treatment. For the first time in my life, one of my first thoughts was, how much will this visit cost me? As a parent, I was sickened by the fact that insurance costs are now factoring into whether or not I can afford to seek medical treatment for my child. No one should have to choose whether or not to seek medical care based on the inability to pay. We would have gladly chosen a doctor's office or urgent care facility, but they were all closed for the holiday. After 2.5 hours of care, an x-ray, 4 different lab tests, 3 medications, she was diagnosed with pneumonia, and we were able to finally go home. I was grateful that it was diagnosed early enough that she did not need to be admitted overnight. My next thought was, great, now we wait for the impending medical bill. January 20th, it's now time for my quarterly refill on 2 of my life-saving heart medications. So I submit my refill request to the pharmacy and I wait. Again, for the first time ever, I am anxiously anticipating what the charge will be when I arrive to pick up medications. I knew when I switched to a high deductible plan that the early months would be difficult to budget for, but the full gravity of the situation hit me in a very, very short period of time, especially coupled with an unexpected ER visit. $1,545.29. This is the ER bill that arrived on January 22nd. $1,729.59 is the cost waiting for me at the pharmacy on January 24th. $3,274.88 is the amount that I have incurred already towards my $4,000 deductible. Mind you, this is all in the last 3 weeks. Now, for those of you keeping score, you can see my medical costs incurred this month alone exceed my entire monthly income. While a hospital is willing to take a payment plan, pharmacies do not. And going off of my heart medication cold turkey is not an option. I'm just one example of the thousands of educators being impacted by the crushing weight of medical costs. And while I'm fortunate enough to have savings to cover these costs, many educators do not, especially our newer teachers that have a lower income on the salary schedule.
Thank you, Mrs. Sandifer. I'm sorry.
Yes, I know, so
We got
sorry.
10 minutes and I have 2 more people to testify. So thank you very much for talking about the impact that this has had on you. And I don't have time, I got 2 more people. Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to ask Bill Wolfson, Deputy CEO of the Great Lakes Water Authority.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Honorable Committee. My name is Bill Wilson. I'm Deputy Chief Executive Officer of the Great Lakes Water Authority. We are the state's largest provider of water and sewer services. We serve on the water side 40% of Michigan's population, approximately, and on the sewer side 30%. So as you might imagine, recruitment and retention is an important issue to us as we have a team of over 1,000 individuals. We are supportive of Bill 6058 because it leveled the playing field. We are an authority, a regional sewer authority formed under PA 233, Public Act 233 of 1955. But as such, that meant that the amount that we could provide our team members in match was 80%. Municipalities could provide 90%. When we're competing against the private sector, we're competing against municipalities, that makes a difference. Originally, one of our unions came to us and said, rather than have an increase in pay, we want you to adjust the match. We responded, well, we can't. We'll partner with you and go to the legislature. And at that point, legislation was introduced that would have allowed us to be a municipality under PA 152. That did not go, but the existing bill was passed. Subsequent to that, and this really for me drove the message home, we had a team member who worked in our water resources recovery facility. He chose to leave our employ. He went to a municipality, a city in Washtenaw County. Same pay, same retirement. The difference was that they matched 90% of his health care. We could only match 80. That was the difference. It is very important to us in this area of recruitment and retention, where we spend a whole lot of time and effort to train our staff because they need it. We are one of the 10 largest water and sewer providers in this country. And we invest a whole lot in training, so we want to retain them. That means in healthcare, we look at plan design. So how can we, while containing costs, provide additional benefits? So, for example, one of the new benefits we provide this year is routine prostate screenings. PSA screenings are now covered by the plan. That is important to us while we contain those costs for that. And this is a way that we could allow our team members to have that choice. You know, do they want to take more in wages? Do they want to have a different healthcare match? So we've been very fortunate in what we're doing and being creative and standing up new benefits. But this is a tool that levels the playing field with us, with other units of government. It's a tool that also allows us to compete with the private sector, and that's why we're supportive. At this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. We're not going to have time for questions. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Next, I'd like to invite up Ken Schroeder from Wyandotte Municipal Services. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Cherry and the senators of the committee. I'm a steward for the city of Wyandotte, represented by IBW Local 17. Wyandotte is unique with power, electric, water, and cable. It's one of the few communities in the state that provide all four of those things. And we also have a regional sewer authority within our limits. We have individuals in our bargaining unit that receive state aid. And if you look at the sheet that was given to you on the right, back in 2013, employees were making $15.44. They weren't paying any medical expenses because that was before the PA 152 Act. So at the bottom, it shows that at $15.44 was their final pay. Now, we're paying upwards of $42,000 is what the city pays for medical insurance. So we have to pay 20% of that. So if you look on the left, those numbers that in red, it represents what the employees pay per year out of pocket. And that includes lots of extra expenses like the mandatory 6% 401k requirement, child care expenses, state and federal aid. So if you look on the bottom at $15.44 and on the left it says $17.34, That's an increase of only 12% in wages over the last 13 or 12 years. We're just looking for a little bit of relief here. We'd like to get this bill passed. It's very, very tough. We're having trouble hiring people. It's a revolving door for a lot of positions there. And a lot of this work with power, electric, water, and cable is critical infrastructure that we need to maintain. So getting people to stay and maintain their positions, that means they're a little more skilled and we can get things done a lot better. So with that, we've tried to lower costs with labor negotiations. We've actually came and had a cost savings of the city of about $750,000, and they turned that down because they have a preferred vendor that they would prefer. But if you look at the middle of the page on the left, $42,000 is a lot of money to pay for medical insurance for anybody, obviously. And so that's for a family. So a family of four, paying almost $8,200. It's hard. So we just have a lot of upset employees. And it's hard to maintain that critical infrastructure. So I just wanted to let you guys know that.
Thank you, Ken. We appreciate you coming in and sharing the issues that you're facing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you to everyone who's come and testified today and to the members here. I sincerely hope we're able to get these bills to the governor's desk. There being no further business before the committee, without objection, the Senate Committee on Labor is now adjourned.